been times and people that other people have tried to suppress to gain their own power. Putting you down makes me greater. In the time of Jesus, women had no authority. As a woman, you could not testify in court. Your testimony wasn't valid. So, if Jamie and Lori saw something happen and said, they did it, their testimony wouldn't hold up in court. That's not convincing. They're women, after all. Who knows what they're thinking? That doesn't work. No. But if Dan and Joel saw the same thing happen and said, yep, that happened. Oh, they're men. We'll listen to them. Okay. Sure. So if you're going to create a legend that holds power and holds weight, you don't say, let's have women be the first to see him. Because women were suspect already. You're not suspect anymore. We're completely gone with that. Okay? Hey now. You wouldn't create the story like the way they did because it, again, flies in the face of culture. Newsweek magazine itself says this, that the apostles would have created such words and ideas out of thin air seems unlikely. For their story and their message strained credulity even then. Paul admitted the difficulty. We preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles. A Cain who died a criminal's death, an individual's resurrection from the dead, a human atoning sacrifice. This is too ridiculous to be believed. Number one, the story's too crazy to make up. Number two, there were witnesses. Up to 400 people saw him at one time. The day he was resurrected, 2 guys are walking to Emmaus, discouraged by what happens, and Jesus appears to them and talks to them. Now, pretty much, hallucinations don't happen to groups at one time. Most of the time, this is a solo activity. I have a friend that used to do drugs. Well, I have several friends that used to do drugs, but one in particular. Some of you have heard this story before when he came out to visit Randall. I told this story before. Randall was at a rave doing some ecstasy, and the first one didn't hit, so he took another hit of ecstasy. And anyway, it all hit at one time. He was at this rave. He and his buddies. And all of a sudden, he sees flying at him these bats flying right at him. They're hitting him, and they're dying, and they're falling to the ground. And he is filled with compassion for the bats. Because the bats, the innocent little bats, are dying. And so he thinks, what can I do to save the bats? And he thinks, if I swallow the bats, then they'll live a little while longer. This makes sense, doesn't it? You're working with this? And so he starts going, catching the bats. His friends who are around him are looking at him going, dude, what are you doing? Dude, the bats, man. We gotta help the bats. Look at this. Randall, there ain't no bats. Yes, there are, man. Don't let them die. Hallucinations are usually solo activities. And here's large groups of people that all see Christ at one time. The oldest New Testament written work by Paul bases his whole theology on the resurrection, written during the time that those who walked with Jesus, who saw this happen, were there. And if it hadn't happened, somebody would have been like, the tomb's over there, you moron. Oh, there's Jesus right over there. 1 Corinthians 15, starting in verse 14. And if Christ has not been raised, then our preaching is useless, and your faith is useless. And we apostles would all be lying about God, for we have said that God raised Christ from the dead. But that can't be true if there's no resurrection from the dead. He couldn't have been raised if there's no resurrection from the dead. It's all based on the fact that Jesus died and was resurrected. And very early, that is a fundamental part of the Christian faith. It's the whole basis of it. He died and was resurrected. The story is too crazy to make up. There were witnesses of it. Number 3, it transformed the lives of the people who experienced it. Okay, before Let's do before and after. You like before and after pictures in magazines? They make me really, really happy. Sometimes I'm like, I don't think that's the same person. I think they photoshopped someone else's head on that person. That's not the same person. Come on.